Welcome to This Day Live, the Sunday talk show where we discuss all things political, bringing you the top stories locally, nationally, and from around the world. I'm Ruben Abati, and This Day Live begins now. I'd like to welcome today's panelists, Professor Bola Akintenwa, Director General, Bolitech Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies. Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director, Enough is Enough. And of course, Ayo Teriba, CEO, Economic Associates. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Now, let's start with Iran. It's a very hot topic out there. President Donald Trump announced on Tuesday that the United States will pull out of the landmark nuclear accord with Iran. Let's listen to his address.
This agreement was known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or JCPOA. In theory, the so-called Iran deal was supposed to protect the United States and our allies from the lunacy of an Iranian nuclear bomb, a weapon that will only endanger the survival of the Iranian regime. In fact, the deal allowed Iran to continue enriching uranium and, over time, reach the brink of a nuclear breakout. In fact, the deal allowed Iran to continue enriching uranium and, over time, the fact is this was a horrible one-sided deal that should have never, ever been made. Therefore, I am announcing today that the United States will withdraw from the Iran nuclear deal. In a few moments, I will sign a presidential memorandum to begin reinstating U.S. nuclear sanctions on the Iranian regime.
Prof, I'll come to you because this is right down your alley. First, it was a climate change deal. Now it's the Iran nuclear deal. And I know you've written a lot on denuclearization. What is at stake here? Is Donald Trump taking the world forward or taking us backward?
I like your question. I think Donald Trump is moving at high velocity, but negatively. He's not moving the world forward. What Donald Trump considers nuclear lunacy, to a great extent, yes, but who is responsible? What is at stake? There are many issues. The first thing is that, when an agreement is done in the spirit of a sanctity of agreement, or what the experts will normally refer to as pacta sunt servanda, the issue is that the United States can always withdraw for as long as there is provision for the modality for the withdrawal. Now, United States did sign. It was done by Barack Obama, then President of the United States. Other allies of the United States were there. The agreement is normally called P5+1, that is the permanent members of the Security Council, +1, that is Germany. Now they signed this agreement, like Donald Trump rightly pointed out, that it was meant to protect, the Western countries, the signatories, against, quote and unquote, nuclear lunacy of Iran. Now, the issue is that all other signatories do agree that there was no threat. But United States alone is the country, and the only country saying, no, Iran is not complying with the obligations. All right. The first issue there is the conflict of interest between and amongst the signatories. the truth is that as at now, Iran is on record, according to the International Atomic Agency in Vienna, saying that Iran has been complying. You will recall the case of Iraq, all right, Saddam Hussein. The international community was saying Iraq did not have any weapons of precisely. Now, because America has a fixated policy agenda, the United States refused to listen to the whole world. That is repeating itself right now. So the issue there is that, is America following the Saddam Hussein mentality? More critically, the Americans are saying that if the other signatories, France, Germany, United Kingdom, aid and abet any of his companies in Iran, all right, that is contrary to the position of the US, that they will sanction such countries, to the extent now that, okay, what is happening as of today is simply that at the end of the day, they too are re-strategizing. These countries are looking at the possibility of having the euro and no longer the dollar to trade.
But many of these European countries, they've already bought into the idea. You know, they are more or less supporting Donald Trump.
They are not.
No.
They are not in agreement.
Okay.
They've all voiced their opposition.
All of them.
They've all expressed their desire to continue the pact, with Iran. That's the way they see forward. It's just that they are dependent economically and militarily on the United States. And the United States has given them notice to wind down, their companies to wind down. And if they failed to do so, America could deal with those companies.
So I mean, what are the implications for global economy and for business?
Well, it depends on who gets his way. The way it is right now, America is acting unilaterally. Nobody in Europe is supporting them. Even China and Russia are not in support. Yeah. However, the American president is acting under the influence of Saudi Arabia and Israel. Who are sworn enemies of Iran. So the only hope, because in the time that they were debating sanctions on racist South Africa, Ronald Reagan, refused to agree to the imposition, but the Congress overturned his personal views. So if the Congress could eventually come in here and express, the desire for the U.S. to continue, that could break the stalemate. Otherwise,
there's something here, that a lot of people have talked about. What looks like double standards in this denuclearization politics. Why is it that some countries can acquire nuclear capacity and some countries are not allowed to?
Two possible reasons. Priority is given to protection of the national interest. When the preliminary discussion started in 1963, China did not accept to sign. France did not accept to sign. But when they went back, perfected their nuclear missile, tests, voluntarily they came back and accept to sign. So when the 1968 nuclear non-proliferation treaty was done, at the end of the day, they were carried along. But the treaty answers your question directly. The definition of who should be considered a nuclear power. Now it says that any country that had successfully tested nuclear missile is a nuclear power. And now a nuclear power has the right to continue to maintain because such country has successfully tested it. All right. They think that they are better and they will be more cautious and they will not constitute a threat to the maintenance of international peace and security. So in this case, we have that category of countries. Now, in direct answer to your question, any other country not considered a nuclear power, all right, is a suspect. They call them rogue state, and they do not trust any one of them, particularly if it is a country that is anti-Europe or America. Iran falls under this category.
What about North Korea?
Not Korea, precisely. North Korea is there. But many other countries.
But North Korea has successfully tested.
Let me bring
It's now, it qualifies to be de facto, but not yet de jure.
There was a time Nigeria was toying with the idea of becoming a nuclear power. And at the time, there was even some reports about some researchers at the Obafemi Awolowo University working on it. And I think we also have an atomic agency kind of body doing this.
Professor Yemi talked about the black bomb.
Yeah, so you think we stand a chance, of even doing something close to becoming something close to being a nuclear power, whatever.
Something close to, I don't know, maybe another 25. I mean, it's a possibility, because I think despite Nigeria's challenges, what has continuously come out is our ability to do remarkable things with very limited resources. So it could be by accident, or it could be deliberate, but it is quite possible. It will just be, I think I remember on social media when that news came out a while ago, and the joke was that we haven't even sorted out electricity. We're trying to become a nuclear power, just as a contrast, but it is possible.
Yeah, there are many.
Nigeria is doing it, but we declare it is for peaceful use only. All right, we have an office in Abuja, and we have very competent, very knowledgeable people in
nuclear physics.
Yes, nuclear physics. They are there.
Well, it's time now for a break here on This Day Live, the Sunday talk show. When we return, we'll be discussing the adoption of a political party by the Coalition of Nigeria movement. Don't go away. Welcome back to This Day Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. Now, the Coalition of Nigeria movement, formed by former Nigerian President Olusegun Obasanjo and others, on Thursday, adopted a political party, the African Democratic Party. Chief Obasanjo said the party, ADC, as I understand it, is neither based on the immediate past condemnable records of PDP as a ruling party in Nigeria, nor on the present performance of the All Progressives Congress. It is a new platform and a new page in our political history, and that the movement had adopted a renewed and reinvigorated strategy. He have announced that he will not be a member of the ADC. Now, in addition to that, there have been reports also that other groups, like the Nigerian Intervention Movement and, a coalition of other political parties, are also talking to the Coalition for Nigeria movement. And their objective is to ensure that they take the present government, they vote the present government out of office in 2019. Yemi, you must have been following developments in the political scene. What do you think of this development, a coalition mobilizing Nigerians to ensure change in 2019?
I mean, I'm still uncertain around the difference between the Coalition for the Nigeria movement and the Nigeria Intervention movement. They are talking, but their agenda, in a sense, lacks a bit of clarity. But CNM now has morphed into ADC. But I think it's quite significant if you can get, we have 68 political parties. So if you take the two dominant ones out, you have 66 left. And if you can get 30, 35 of them to agree to back one candidate, that is quite significant. Now, regardless of how large the parties might be, but I think the messaging around the fact that 35 parties are willing to sort of drop their own agendas, if I want to use that word, to align around a common goal of working towards voting out President Buhari. I think that is definitely significant. And I'm happy, and I'm happy for INEC. Well, actually, I'm happy for citizens, because from the perspective of the coalition doesn't mean they'll merge, because I was thinking it would be nice to reduce the length of the ballot paper if we get fewer parties on it as opposed to the 68.
Yeah, and of course, coalitions have worked elsewhere.
Exactly.
In Kenya with qualified success,
yes.
And most recently in Malaysia.
Yes.
But Teriba, you were going to say something.
Yes, I think we are making too much of the coalition that General Obasanjo is leading. These are you have to be very careful, you know, how much of the current electoral offices does ADC control. So if you are saying...
It has one member in the Bayelsa State House of Assembly.
Congratulations. So if you're saying you're adopting that kind of a platform, you are in a situation, Nigeria is essentially, you know, a two-party, is either PDP or APC. And if it happened the way APC was formed, that people who were active, who had elective offices, left one party for the other, they can be a threat. You are forming a coalition of people who have no electoral value, and we are making a lot of noise about it. We are likening it to Kenya. I think the coalition is just wasting its time.
Prof, do you agree with him, Prof?
I do not. Because the environmental factors he's considering do not reflect the situational reality of the politics on ground. I disagree with you because, one, even at the level of the APC, right, which is the ruling party, those politicians who left the PDP to join the APC are on ground, they've given an ultimatum, right, to the party leaders to decide because they are complaining of marginalization there inside it. So already the APC is a party divided against itself, not just ab initio. The currency of the truth is just that. The second point is that if you look at the coalition as propounded, produced, and submitted by Olusegun Obasanjo, he came up with one theory that, look, neither the APC nor the PDP should be considered as an issue to address. He's saying, look, they are not against anyone. They are emphasizing a new orientation, new focusing with a, let me say, tripod of points. Point one, they are now saying that henceforth, there shouldn't be any reason why the women should not be integrated there, 30% women less than 40 years. Then 30% of youth in government. They raised the issue of the diasporans, that people should be able to vote in our diplomatic missions abroad. A number of issues like that, newness of approach. This, please, if you take an opinion poll of what is happening in Nigeria now, I can use, quote and unquote scientifically, most Nigerians are already fed up with promises of change that are yet to come. So if Obasanjo is now working on the basis of that to attract more voters, I think it's likely to be followed. So having an ADC of one member in one state wouldn't matter. Well, and more importantly,
the platform can be rebuilt. If it's a coalition, what I guess is that, you know, there will be fusion. There will be a lot of people coming in, and there will be structures that will come together. Exactly. But yeah, I mean, what do you consider to be the main challenges ahead? I mean, we've had this news about this coalition taking a platform, and then we're having world congresses, local government elections. You must have seen certain signs about what the future promises.
I mean, just to pick up on what Prof had said, had laid out, it's quite clear that there's discontent. I mean, there's a Yoruba proverb that talks about the enemy within being more powerful than the enemy outside. Without. So if APC is fighting itself, which the world congresses have shown us, and I think at the last count, I think it was about 60% of the world congresses ended up in some sort of mayhem. Fighting. So if that's there, and then that then parallels with your point about ADC, then if there's now a platform that people feel provide an alternative, the key really will be how quickly are they able to get that to be the adopted platform, because you then have to imprint, I mean, a bit to Mr. Teriba's point around people being very familiar with your APC and your PDP. But in a short amount of time, you need to give them another name to rally around. And then also bring in people that give it beyond former President Obasanjo, but others, either women as they are recruiting or young people that they're trying to recruit, who suddenly give the party new energy and are able to attract people to it. But it'll be, what it is it'll be I think the playing field is not as clear-cut as an APC-PDP. You've now given people the opportunity to think about another option. And if APC continues, you have people giving you ultimatums, your ward congresses, people fighting. So your ruling party is fighting. PDP hasn't, in the course of this administration, PDP hasn't been much of an opposition, quite frankly, because they've been dealing with their own internal issues. So in the light of that, there is an opportunity.
Well, I guess you're right. Virtually all the major political parties have crisis in terms of internal democracy.
Yes.
I think that's where the problem really is. Yes, Teresa.
We are on the outside. None of us is a member of any of these political parties. So let's recognize our own limitations as external observers and not exaggerate the seeming divisions, among
the same
Look at the Ekiti primaries. A week ago, it was war. Okay, that's APC primary. They've done it yesterday. This morning, they're already shaking one another's hands. The winner is visiting the other candidates in their homes. They are pledging,
which I think is commendable.
They are pledging to work together for victory. So
he appealed to them. He begged them.
Exactly.
And after he defeated them.
Yeah,
so
when
you are trying to win, and it looks like
he didn't have to, and that's his point. He'd already won by the time he was begging.
That's right. So that they won't leave the way you say something.
I think what has happened at the end of the day is commendable, because he said he's not returning to Ekiti State for the governorship position on a revenge mission.
Yes.
And he said, his co-contestants should not be victimized by his supporters, and he's visited a number of them, and they received him well.
Yes,
that is the spirit.
That's right.
Instead of what Nigerians call do or die politics.
That's right. It looked like that a week ago. It looked like do or die, when they suspended the
yeah, but there will still be issues that they will need to resolve.
So this is the first aim at first cut at a kumbaya moment. The real test is in what happens over the next 2 months.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And it will be interesting to monitor what happens.
Indeed.
However, the various movements, the coalitions, they can't, as a coalition, win an election. They will need the vehicle of a political party.
Indeed.
So the Coalition for Nigeria, taking a platform, has taken a step forward, in my view.
Indeed.
It's time now for a short break here on This Day Live, the Sunday talk show. When we return, we'll be discussing the Ebola outbreak in Democratic Republic of Congo. Don't go away. Welcome back to This Day Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. The World Health Organization announced a new outbreak of Ebola in the Democratic Republic of Congo on Tuesday, after DRC health officials reported 2 confirmed cases of the disease in Bikoro, a health zone in the country's northwest Equator province. This is the second the country has faced since the largest ever Ebola epidemic swept through West Africa in 2014. Meanwhile, in Nigeria, the health workers' unions on Friday threatened to withhold help for emergency measures against Ebola because of an ongoing strike over pay and conditions. Now, Yemi, I'll start with you. Ebola all over again. It looks like we need to be prepared because Nigeria has been identified as one of the likely countries at risk. What should government do? What steps should government be taking? Especially at this time when the group called JOHESU, the joint health unions, are on strike.
The first thing is really to get on the table and negotiate back. The terms of the strike is that government agreed to some payments, I believe 6 months ago, and they haven't made those payments. The 2018 budget hasn't been signed, so there's the guys that there is no money to pay them. So maybe a first step would be for the 2018 budget to be signed so that monies can be released to settle this agreement, because government did make the agreement, so that our healthcare workers are where they need to be and ready to work. And then in a sense, I'll say copy and paste, because Nigeria's success in 2014 has been, lauded in the movies, lauded internationally. And so whatever lessons were learned from that, really to get on the ball and follow that protocol. I was even just checking A partner organization of AIE, Big Kabbalah, done a website in 2014 called ebolafacts.com, and it's still live. So I would definitely recommend that people get on there and remind themselves of the protocols around keeping safe and keeping the environment safe.
Is it the people themselves? Is there a role in terms of public enlightenment?
Most definitely.
For certain categories of
everybody.
groups?
I mean, and I think that's what Ebola Facts set out to do, was their own CSR contribution to the cause. And some of the material were then pasted on billboards and moving across in offices, on flyers. But citizens do have a responsibility to understand what Ebola means. Make sure you wash your hands, make sure you don't, I mean, it's contagious, so stay away from people who are bleeding. All the protocols that we know, citizens do have an obligation to be aware, in addition to government reiterating it constantly. Public spaces, employers of labor, making sure that sanitizers are readily available, that there's water in your office, keeping your environment clean, just really your part about it, which is why I said copy and paste, because we've been through this before, and we should just reactivate that model.
Prof, what do you think? Preventive measures?
Well, I don't know whether we should be talking about preventive measures. One, if you look at the origins of EVD, Ebola virus disease, it started in the same DRC,
Yes.
Central Africa, in 1976. Now, in 1976, there were 388 cases with about 28 deaths to begin with. In 1977, only one case. All right? But thereafter, we have more than 200, 300 cases reoccurring until the period 1995 to 2012, when we didn't have any reported case. The point to note in answering when we are talking about preventive measures, it originated from the Central African region. It was brought to West Africa, Liberia, before it extended to Guinea and possibly Sierra Leone. The issue now is that...
And then a Liberian brought it to Nigeria.
Exactly, yes, Patrick Sawyer.
Yes.
Now, when you look at it critically, the problem started with the intention of the West, particularly the United States, to carry out research on the virus. That was why they set up a laboratory in Liberia. All right. And the thinking by that time was that Patrick Sawyer, who was infected, and bearing in mind that the disease, the virus was contagious, came to Nigeria. Now, why is it that since the inception of this disease, why is it recurring? One possible explanation is to go along the theory according to which they are still experimenting. All right. Another theory is to look at it, why is it starting again from DRC?
DRC.
So, when we are talking about preventive measure, we are assuming that there is no conscious attempt to really want the virus to be spread. All right. So, hypothetically...
This is a conspiracy theory.
Yes, precisely.
Yes.
But can you prove it? You really cannot prove it.
You can't prove
Well,
There is a conspiracy.
that's why it is hypothetical.
Exactly.
But the issue is that the coincidental factors are just there. Because when it started, please, look at the characteristics of the EVD. It started in DRC, it moved to Liberia, all right? And in Liberia now, a laboratory was established to investigate, all right? The next thing, please, after Patrick Sawyer came to Nigeria, there were two others that attempted to come to Nigeria through Afo local government area, Imeko, to enter Nigeria. That was after Patrick Sawyer's case.
Yes.
Okay. So why is it that everybody was targeting Nigeria?
Teriba, I see you've been itching to say something.
Well,
So we have preventive measures, we have conspiracy theory. Where do you stand?
okay, where I stand is all the history that Prof has traced, very good, to refresh our memory. But the point to emphasize is that the previous outbreak, of the epidemic, met the world by surprise. Yeah, and that's why it was able to spread. Even medical personnel were exposed, and there were casualties among medical personnel. The advantage that we have this time is that we have dealt with it before. So people are aware, and therefore, you may say that
and we've received early warning.
The level of immunity in the system this time is higher than when, things had spread, across several West African states and into Nigeria before we woke up to it and we had casualties. So let's hope that the experience that the world had gained in tackling it the last time will be deployed quickly to contain this outbreak, in DRC. And that government will, raise the level of public awareness so that we prevent, that's what my hope is.
Let's come back to the conspiratorial theory.
No, I'll come back to you, Prof. I'll come back to you. Given the state of our healthcare system, with, a number of people are quite nervous that should there be another Ebola outbreak, will we be able to handle it? All nurses and other, health workers are on strike. Even the president, some will add, has had to travel abroad again for medical attention.
He's back.
Yes, he has returned. Yes. But, are you nervous that should there be a major public health crisis, we will not be caught, on a difficult side of the matter?
A bit, and I guess that's why I started off by saying a starting point will be to pass the budget to settle our healthcare workers so they can get back to work. I think in the life of this administration, maybe it seems like that to me, but it seems like between members of the academic staff, universities, and our healthcare sector, it seems like a series of strikes of just downing tools to get attention, to get monies paid. So yes, and layer that on the exodus of professionals that we've had from the country over the last 3 years. There was an article recently about doctors in the UK and the numbers that are leaving the country. Layer that about our failed healthcare infrastructure to even start with. So one is the people doing the work. The second bit is the failed infrastructure.
Well, isn't it ironic?
And our president doesn't. I say this, that you can accept, for example, that there are challenges within the healthcare space and we don't have the expertise to deal with particular ailments. We don't know what his ailment is. So for the sake of argument, let's say we don't have the expertise, that's fair enough. But if you then do that, and then parallel to that, you are working to build the healthcare infrastructure, then you can be cut some slack. But if you, by your choices, both for yourself and for your family members, i.e. his son, make choices that show your lack of faith in Nigeria's healthcare sector, but then are not doing anything to improve it, then that says a lot about how much you value a Nigerian life.
Well, Prof, back to the politics of Ebola and the conspiracy theory you were defining.
We should not easily forget that Nigeria did ask the United States for ZMapp, the vaccine, needed to treat Ebola victims. We were not given. All right. And when you are talking about immunity, I wouldn't see any factor of immunity in this case, because immunity will require that you have taken some drugs, medicine to build up your
emotional immunity. Social immunity.
But I will say, though, there was a tweet,
higher level of awareness.
There was a tweet by the Director General, I forget what his title is, of the World Health Organization at, I think, a minister at DRC, saying that they will dispatch vaccines to them immediately. So maybe the dynamics of that has changed.
The world is more ready.
Well, Nigeria kick-started it, all right? Anyway. Nigeria was left alone. We started it, and unexpectedly, nobody expected that Nigeria would be able to do it.
Well, we keep watching developments on this particular subject, but as you have all pointed out, let's hope that government will be on alert and do the needful to prevent any epidemic or public health crisis. We take another break here on This Day Live, the Sunday talk show. When we return, we will discuss the continuing war against Boko Haram and the military's rescue of 1,000 captives. Stay tuned. Welcome back to This Day Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. Now, on the release of 1,000 Boko Haram captives by the Nigerian military, the Nigerian military on Monday announced its rescue of 1,000 people held captive in northeastern Nigeria by Boko Haram. The hostages, who consisted mainly of women and children, were rescued from 4 villages in the Bama area of Borno State. The military conducted the operation with allies from the multinational Joint Task Force. Good news, right? 1,000 Boko Haram victims set free by the Nigerian military. But we don't seem to have all the details, who these people are, where they're being kept, what this means in real terms, and whether this is just public relations stunt.
Indeed.
What do you think, Prof?
The first point is that government is now trying to re-educate us on the meaning of technical defeat of the Boko Haram. If by now we are being presented with the hard facts that 1,000 people, I think it's quite commendable. But that clearly suggests that this time the government is now possibly winning. So we shouldn't talk about technical defeat any longer. We are at the level of the battle in preparation for winning the war. I think it is so far so good.
Yemi?
Well, a couple of things. Number one, 1,000 people from Bama, local government, that had been in contention for quite a while. And as you said, we don't have any information on how many men, how many women, how many children. One of the things the Bring Back Our Girls movement recommended in 2014, it's a model that we created called VAS, a verification, authentication, reunification system, so that when people are found, you are able to say, these 3 people were missing from Chibok, these 5 people were missing from Bama, these 10 people were missing from Yobe, and we don't have that. And the government, this administration, has consistently failed to do that. So how do you know, and this speaks to your point about defeating Boko Haram or not, how can you reconcile welcoming 1,000 people back when you didn't know they were missing in the first place? Now, this also ties with another project of the Bring Back Our Girls movement, which is a missing persons register. Nigeria doesn't have one. And it started also as a fallout of the Chibok abduction in being able to say, let there be a process for Nigerians to be able to report someone missing, so that when the government now says, we found this person, you can then net it off, and that goes. So I think for the Nigerian military, to your point, it says a lot that you say you've rescued 1,000 people, but you say nothing around the context of the rescue. Was there a shootout? Was there a fight? How do you rescue people and you forget those details? What has been positioned is that the fact that people basically were not rescued, but sort of seen. So it wasn't that the Nigerian army did anything, but kind of picked them up where they found them. The Shehu of Bama, the traditional ruler of Bama, lives in Maiduguri because he says Bama is not safe. And this rescue really reinforces what he's saying. So there are issues that the Nigerian army needs to speak to in terms of helping Nigerians restore confidence in what it is we're talking about regarding this war. There's some who believe that in some parts of Nigeria, Boko Haram does have land.
Well, when a process, maybe it looks like we're beginning to win the battle. Isn't it the case that in the last 1 week, there were so many attacks on communities, on villages,
suicide bombs
around Kaduna State, in other parts of the north? So it looks like we take 1 step forward, and we take 2.
You have to be careful.
2 steps back.
About attacks around Kaduna and the rest of it. We are discussing Boko Haram.
No, but all this falls under the umbrella of national insecurity.
So we are not talking about.
It's the same issue of
defeating
national
Boko Haram.
insecurity.
We are not talking about herdsmen or clashes between.
Who are the herdsmen? We still don't know.
And
exactly. So
the way they are described, they are different from Boko Haram. Prof was saying that perhaps now we could say that the defeat has started.
But this is the same government that says they have technically defeated, and that's Prof being sarcastic.
I am in agreement with government that they
they've
have
technically
defeated
Boko Haram. But you're now agreeing with Prof that
Boko Haram
maybe
is
now...
in retreat, and they are beginning to recover captives from them.
So how can you be in retreat from Bama?
Unlike when they were
Mr. Terry,
capturing local government areas.
Bama, if I'm not mistaken, was recovered either in 2015 or 2016.
Right.
So how can you say you're rescuing people from Bama that you took control of 2 years ago?
We will await the details.
Well, that's precisely the point.
Yes,
it's been a week, no details. And
that's not good enough, yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Well, Prof, you want to have the last word on this? Maybe you want to reconsider your optimism, your initial optimism.
No, actually, it wasn't optimism.
Okay.
You used the correct word, sarcastic. No, you see, the issue is that at the end of the day, technical defeat means at the level of battle, shooting war, you have succeeded in completely neutralizing both the capacity and capability of the opponents. All right. But it's not the case.
It's almost the case.
How can you say
it can be almost, but it's not the case.
Okay, thank you.
It's not the case. If it is not, it is not. It's as simple. We are told if it is not a 7-up, it is not 7-up. So you have not, in the past 1 week, we are still having a series of attacks.
But I think, what we need to bring home in this is the consistency in both the Jonathan administration and the Buhari administration in dealing with Nigerian citizens as a part of this governance project. So that citizens deserve information, citizens deserve something. I mean, nobody's asking for security secrets or security strategies. No, just treat Nigerian citizens like people who should know where their family members are, when they are found, where they are. I mean, there's still a girl that was found in January.
Not simply to know. You are right. Not simply to know, but to garner public support in terms of intelligence gathering, in terms of have to provide supportive assistance to government strategy.
That's it.
So you are correct, but it's not like that.
That's a good message to not just government, but also to civil society. After all, at the end of the day, the whole purpose of governance is to ensure the security and the welfare of the people, and to ensure that the right to life and the right to human dignity, is respected. You are watching this Day Live, the Sunday talk show here on Arise News with me, Ruben Abati. We're heading for a break now, but stay tuned. We will be back. Welcome back to this Day Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. Mahathir Mohamad was sworn in as Malaysia's 7th Prime Minister on Thursday after leading a coalition of opposition parties to a historic election victory. This makes him the world's oldest leader. The ceremony at the official state palace in Kuala Lumpur ended a day of uncertainty during which rumors circulated that the National Front, Malaysia's ruling party for 60 years, would try to stay in power. New development in Malaysia. The new Prime Minister, he was 4th Prime Minister, now he's back as 7th Prime Minister. He is 92, he will be 93 in July. Terrible, what do you think? Because if that were to happen in Nigeria, his age would be a serious issue.
Yes, particularly people calling on the president to leave at the end of this term on account of age. What you did not state is the reason Malaysians wanted him to come back. It's his anti-corruption credentials that endeared him to them. And there are stories of, loot that had already been recovered, within hours of him being sworn in, particularly the leader, that just stepped off. So,
Najib Razak.
Sorry?
Najib Razak.
You are beginning to see a repeat of the pattern. We discussed South Korea jailing their former presidents, Brazil and South African president being on trial, that the world, the electorate, want somebody they can trust, that he will not steal, their wealth. And they want somebody that can stand up to looters and say, no, we shouldn't betray public trust. And that's also might point to the reason why, in spite of people coming out to, bring all this fault about President Buhari, one thing that stands him well is that people believe he's not a thief, and that he's not allowing, people that is taught, compared to the previous regimes, 16 years under PDP is hard to single out any leader that you say you can vouch for is not a thief, So basically, that element that it doesn't have to be young, it doesn't have to be competent, it has to be honest.
Well,
and that's the attribute that people look for in leaders. Yes.
From what has just happened in Malaysia. First time in about 61 years that you have a change of a party in government, and first time that many young people in that country will vote. So you may be right in terms of the issue of trust. You may also be right in terms of the issue of people power, particularly young people standing behind this elder statesman who mobilize people in a coalition. But Yemi, what's your take? How significant do you think what is going on in Malaysia is?
I think the whole issue of age, I think, is really very fascinating. EIA did a study, I think it was last year, looking on the African continent and how many African leaders were above, I think, 65, 70 or so.
This is North Africa.
No, but I think the narrative, and I think that's why it's important, the narrative was the fact that Africa's demographic advantage is in young people, but they're being led by those above 70. But I think if you then parallel it to what you were saying about Malaysia, that you had young people who chose to vote for someone who is not even 70, he's 92, because there was trust, because they felt that this man had something to give, so his age was no longer an issue. So it's an interesting conversation that also, if you bring it back to Nigeria, in 2015, President Buhari's age wasn't an issue, really. It was really more about what he brought to the table as well. So the whole integrity, honesty, and all of that. But now, given the fact that he spent, I think, about 7 months in 3 years out of the country due to health issues, and he's seen not to be as agile and able to process or manage all the different moving pieces of Nigeria, his age is suddenly an issue. Not suddenly, is now more of an issue. So I'm not sure that for Nigeria, honesty, integrity, anti-corruption would trump age, because people at this point realize that you need someone who has the physical strength, in addition to the honesty and the integrity, and the mental capacity to actually process all the pieces of information that's presented to him and being able to make a decision. It took us 6 months to have a cabinet.
You're saying young
Mahathir Mohamad.
But his health issue
Mahathir Mohamad, though, is almost like, he's a national icon in Malaysia. And for the 22 years that he was prime minister, he did a lot to industrialize, to transform the place. Trade and development. So he has the experience, he has the reputation. Exactly. But he has also been accused of corruption. His children had also been accused of corruption, getting involved in almost 200 companies. But he insists that nothing was ever proven against him. So when we talk about trust and all that, it's just, I think, the leadership that he has brought forward. And he has said, of course, that he will spend only 2 years, that he just wants to help to stabilize the country. Prof, do you see a situation where somebody, old man comes back to stabilize Nigeria? Because we seem to have similar challenges with Malaysia. You think it's possible, yeah?
It's quite possible. Your question is quite interesting because it can be addressed at two different complementary levels. The first level, as raised by Ayo and Yemi, is the relationship, the linkage between honesty, integrity on the one hand, and age. You can be honest, you can have integrity. If the Constitution does not allow for it, you can't be there. So the age, 92, sooner than later 93, is enabled because the Malaysian Constitution enabled it. We should get that one straight. The second level of analysis is that already in Nigeria, there's an ongoing debate at the level of the general public. That is the extent to which any political candidate should present his medical report before you can be eligible to be voted for. Now, the debate is ongoing. A school of thought believes that, look, at the end of the day, you are serving the public, and whatever you are going to do cannot, stricto sensu, be differentiated from your private life. That we must know your health situation. The other school of thought says, look, the candidate is entitled to his privacy. Now, all these arguments are valid. They are raised in the context of Muhammadu Buhari. All right? They take a look. In fact, historiographically, they look at the time he's been going to London for many days, for months. And we are now saying that if age will be a factor preventing you from
Working.
then why not present your report? The opponent is saying, well, if you present the report today, which anybody can forge, they accuse that, look, Nigerians are good in forging such reports. What if he falls sick in the future? My position in this case is that, look, by the time you are coming in, have a healthy report. All right? Yeah. If you fall sick in the future, there's no big deal about that.
Back to the Constitution.
Back to the Constitution. So my answer, in this case in Nigeria, it is quite possible if we decide to be honest. Governance in Nigeria is not about honesty. I've always argued that, I don't know,
it now needs to be about honesty.
The system doesn't allow for honesty. It doesn't allow for hard work. It doesn't allow for objectivity of purpose.
Prof, maybe you add this to it. Part of the major issue in Malaysia is how the government lost the people. One of the first things that Mahathir Mohamad has done, taking over, is to repeal the Anti-Fake News Act, which is something people have been talking about here. And also the National Security Council Act, which practically gave Prime Minister Najib, as he then was, powers to do almost as he wanted.
Yes.
You know. So, but
those are the things I think sorry, for Nigeria at that time.
Well, we have to go. You've been watching This Day Live, the Sunday talk show here on Arise News. I'm Ruben Abati. From our team here in Lagos, it's bye for now, and thank you very much for watching.